Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro, Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, everyone, to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. I hope everyone is enjoying their day so far today. It is a beautiful day here in New York City, and it is Mother's Day. So to all you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. Thank you for all that you do as a mother that rarely your kids give you credit for. But yeah, so sit back and relax today and let them wash the dishes. So God bless all the mothers out there. And speaking of God, I am so excited. I can't tell you how great it is that we now have a new pope in 2,000 years of Christianity. That Pope is not from Europe. He's not from any foreign country. The new Pope is from the United States. And, 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide celebrated when Robert Francis Prevost became the leader of the Catholic Church. I don't know about you, but I was thrilled. And, the selection of the Pope, primarily conducted through the conclave, was absolutely fascinating. And I was in my office at Fox yesterday, or a couple days ago, the day when this happened. And when the white smoke came out, I just screamed. It was like, it's happening. And then to find out that the Pope is an American was absolutely exhilarating. And we've got this new Pope. He's 69 years old. He was born in Chicago. He went to Villanova and then the University of Pennsylvania, and then had a theological education in Chicago. But what's interesting about this Pope is that he is part of the order of the Augustine, so the first pope of the Augustinian order. And that order is one that lives in poverty and depends on the charity of others for support. And typical orders like the Order of St. Augustine are the Franciscans, the Dominicans, and they're known for commitment to community service and communal life, and they emphasize poverty and obedience. And he takes the name Leo the 14th. He's already had his first mass in the Sistine Chapel, as 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide celebrated. We didn't know him. We didn't know who he was. And yet the Catholic world was ecstatic, as I was. I am a Catholic, and so for me, this was especially touching. Now, let's talk a little bit about his beliefs. He has very similar beliefs, folks, to Pope Francis. He shared messages of support for vaccinations during the pandemic. He supported the BLM protests in the aftermath of George Floyd. Little different there. So it's going to be a very, very interesting several years. And I say several years because this Pope is 69 years old. He is relatively young in terms of popes coming along. He is an incredible individual, and stay tuned for more on this Pope. But for so many Catholics, it's a shot in the arm to have an American Pope. Hopefully, this will do something that will benefit people going back to church in the United States. And, recently we're finding that young people in this country are becoming a little more religious and Catholic. So this Pope will be someone who I believe will make a big difference in terms of religion in America. But we are today going to talk about a few different things. And as always, we're armed and ready to serve justice with all my great listeners here on the Red Apple Audio Network. We will talk to Professor Alan Dershowitz and also Andy McCarthy, the two of them brilliant legal minds about what's going on with immigration, what's going on college campuses, what's going on with deportations, and why is there so much controversy over something that should be relatively simple. We'll get to these topics and break them all down for you on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. It's all coming up next.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
This episode is brought to you by GMC. GMC certified service technicians are factory trained to fit your vehicle with the tires specifically developed for it. And with our tire price match guarantee, you get the best fit for the best deal. Let us do the work. Available on select eligible tire brands at participating dealers only. Offer ends 12/31/2025. Terms apply. See dealer for complete details. Visit gmc.com/service to learn more.
Hi, this is Joe from Vanta. In today's digital world, compliance regulations are changing constantly, and earning customer trust has never mattered more. Vanta helps companies get compliant fast and stay secure with the most advanced AI, automation, and continuous monitoring out there. So whether you're a startup going for your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or a growing enterprise managing vendor risk, Vanta makes it quick, easy, and scalable. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. Get started at Vanta.com.
Your gut affects everything, even your mood. So Ollie created 2 brand new products to take care of your insides. Ollie Big 10 Probiotic has 10 strains of probiotics, their most ever, to support a healthy gut microbiome, immune system, and stress response. And Ollie Super Good Superfoods delivers 15 superfoods in tasty gummy form. Find them at ollie.com and exclusively at Walmart. Ollie! These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Joining us now is a professor. He is an author. He is one of the intellects, of the legal intellects in this nation, Professor Alan Dershowitz. Please join me in welcoming him to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. And for those of you who don't know him, he was a law professor at Harvard. Get this, folks. Most people can't even get into the place. He was a law professor there for 50 years. Over 50 years, and he's written several books, and he's the host of his own podcast, The Dersh Show. So, Professor Dershowitz, let's talk about Columbia University and the lunacy that's going on there.
Well, it's worse than lunacy. It's criminal. Somebody sent me a newspaper clipping from 1933, which talked about 200 German students, Nazi students, wearing swastikas, going into the dining room and surrounding a table with Jewish students and not allowing them to go to class. And I said to myself, that's exactly what's happening at Columbia. I'm not comparing what's happening at Columbia to what happened to the Nazis in 1940 with crematorium and gas chambers, but I am comparing what happened at Columbia to what happened at Heidelberg University, Berlin, Munich University in 1933, 34, 35 that led up to the Holocaust. It is almost identical. Professors, administrators, students, all harassing Jewish students, treating them like second-class citizens, blocking them from going to classes. We're seeing a repetition of what happened in Germany in the 1930s, and it cannot be tolerated. Colombia has to put an end to it. These people have to be prosecuted. They have to be unmasked. They have to be named. You know, you talk about doxing. No doxing going on. We want to know the names of these people so that no decent company will ever hire them. That's not doxing. That's common sense.
Well, you know, the doxing is, I mean, it's just absurd. It's just a name that they attribute some kind of negativity to as though there's a consequence. But I want to go back for a second. We've got right now Columbia University. This is year 2 of this. It's not as if we hadn't seen this last year. And the only thing that happened was that everybody got pretty much let loose by Alvin Bragg, the DA, assuming there even were criminal charges. So you can take over a building, you can unlawfully imprison, kidnap, as far as I'm concerned, commit criminal mischief, trespass, intimidate, menace, and there is no consequence. So can you blame them for not doing it over and over again? At some point, aren't we so accommodating to criminals that we're inviting them to reoffend?
No question. And Columbia University has to bear some responsibility for it. Certainly civil responsibility, maybe even criminal responsibility. When you encourage people to commit crimes by your inaction, you're at least morally responsible. And we have no doubt that there are professors there. There are professors. Joseph Massad is one of them. He is chairman of the Middle East Studies Department. He encourages this kind of thing. He praised Hamas for what they did on October 7th. He refused to call on a Jewish student, saying, unless you admit you're a war criminal, you can't speak. This is awful stuff that's going on. This is neo-Nazism that's going on. And the president of Columbia, who I know, her father and I were colleagues at Harvard Law School. She's a decent person, but she's not doing the right thing.
Why
she has
isn't
to
she?
Really push very hard.
She's smart.
Yeah, she's very smart. You probably know her from television.
Of course.
I knew her through her father. A decent person, but, you know, there's so much pressure. The faculty today is so radical, so left-wing. The bureaucrats are so left-wing. They won't accept anything except total victory, and especially now that Trump's on the other side. They say, oh, my God, we have the perfect enemy. We're standing up for academic freedom against Donald Trump. And they're getting support from students, from alumni, from donors, from faculty. And that's why your show is so important. The general public has to say, we're not standing for this. Columbia University is part of New York City, and New York City has an obligation to make it safe for every single student, not just students of a particular ethnicity.
Well, and, you know, they are rallying for the support of Mahmoud Khalil, the accused ringleader of the pro-Palestine protests last year. And Khalil was arrested last month, obviously, by Homeland Security, which is part of Immigrations and Customs, telling him that they were revoking his green card and student visa. But now the posters have renamed Butler Library Basel al-Araj Popular University a
named
liberation
after a terrorist.
zone. I mean, they're
Named after a
climbing on
terrorist.
desks, chanting Free Palestine. What the hell does Palestine have to do with this?
Well, first of all, none of these people are pro-Palestine. Since October 7th, there hasn't been a single demonstration calling for a two-state solution, calling for a Palestinian state. These people don't care about Palestine. They don't care about Palestinians. All they care about is they're anti-American, they're anti-Christian, they're anti-Semitic, they're anti-Zionist, they're anti-Israel. They're anti. They're not pro-anything. No Palestinian has ever benefited from any of these demonstrations. I challenge anybody to find a single sign calling for a Palestinian state alongside of Israel. You won't find a single sign. This is all anti, not at all pro, and nobody should call it pro-Palestine because people who really care about the Palestinians have no interest in these demonstrations. They're not helping the people of Gaza. They're not helping the people of the West Bank. Not helping the people of Lebanon. They're not helping anybody. They're just attacking. They're trying to bring down America. Let's understand the ultimate goal of this, to bring down America. That's the goal, to bring down Western democracies. That's their goal. And they say it. if you look at and listen to what they say carefully, it's all anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic. You know, when you start being anti-Semitic, your next step is to be anti-Christian. Look at what they're saying.
Yep.
They're saying there were never any Jews in Jerusalem. If there were never any Jews in Jerusalem, there was never any Jesus. There was never any temple. There were never any money lenders. There's no Vatican. Why are they electing a pope? There was never any Jesus. It's all fake. They're attacking Christianity. They're attacking Judaism. They're attacking Western civilization.
Yeah, they are looking to destroy Western civilization. There's also another piece to this, Professor Dershowitz, and that is, you know, when they talk about funding for research, Harvard, Columbia, Harvard in particular, they've got an endowment. It's
Sure.
not, you know, if they want the advantages and the ability to be an institution that is allowed, you know, government benefits, well, then they've got to make sure that they follow the requirements. And the truth is, use your endowments for that. Be a private institution. You don't need government money for that if you're going to allow this kind of thing to happen.
I'll give you a perfect example of that. Somebody from Harvard the other day said, "Oh, my God, you're cutting off our funding. That means we have to euthanize all the animals that we use for experimentation. Rabbits. You know how much it costs to feed a rabbit? 3 cents a day. They have an endowment of $53 billion. Let them dip into the endowment to save the lives of these rats and these rabbits and stop complaining." Now, you know, ultimately, I think where we're going to move is toward ending funding of universities and requiring individual researchers and labs to make applications to the National Institutes of Health. And so the money doesn't come through the universities. It goes directly to the researchers. That makes the most sense so that the money can't be diverted to political, partisan, and ideological causes.
Yep, I agree. And you know what? It's about time that we separated the two, because the truth is that there are young students and young people who are poor, can't afford college, and yet we're giving money to the colleges and universities that have billions already. And none of it makes sense to me. And then you get a president who wants to forgive student loans in violation of the orders of the Supreme Court.
No, you can't do that, because that just benefits the slackers, the people who didn't pay the loans, and it disadvantages the people who were responsible and paid the loans back. So, no, I think none of that makes any sense. And, you know, the other night, I spoke to the Republican women of New York. What a bunch of great people they were. And they were standing up for American values, and they were brilliant. And I was so thrilled to be honored from them. I'm not a Republican. I'm a former Democrat. And as I said to them, it's a two-step process. First, get people like me out of the Democratic Party. You've succeeded with me. Now get the rest of us out of the Democratic Party. Anybody who's decent doesn't belong in a party headed by Chuck Schumer and Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders. We don't belong there. And then we'll fight about whether we become independents or Republicans. That's a two-step process. But right now, it's important to make sure the Democratic Party understands that it doesn't represent what's decent in America these days.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that Professor Dershowitz, as we watch what is happening unfold at Columbia, that if there isn't anything determinative or specific in terms of actual arrests and prosecutions, we can expect that this is going to continue.
It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse because, remember, if you want to predict what a country will look like in 20 years, you look at its college students, because in 20 years they'll be the leaders. And if these thugs become the leaders of America, if they become members of Congress and editorial board of newspapers and the investment bankers, we're in for real trouble. So we have to change the trajectory of what's going on at colleges. And let's start at Columbia and Barnard. First, I would abolish Barnard. Barnard doesn't serve any purpose at all. It really doesn't have classes. What it does, it used to be a good school. It used to be a good school. Now it's just these programs, these race-oriented, sex-oriented, regionally-oriented programs. Barnard serves no important function. It's basically just a dormitory. So I would not only cut off funding of Barnard, all tax exemptions to Barnard, and if I was Columbia, I would do to Barnard what Harvard did to Radcliffe, shut it down. Radcliffe is now a little institute with a house somewhere down the street. Barnard doesn't deserve to be a separate college. It serves no important function, and it's the most radical part of Columbia University.
Yep. Isn't that interesting? Professor Dershowitz, we always love having you on the show. We appreciate it. And what book are you working on a book right now?
I am. I'm working on a book called Defund or Defend, Who Will Win Trump's War Against the Elite Ivy League Schools. I'm working on that. I just published a book called The Preventive State. I've done, this is my 6th book in 18 months. I'm going nuts. I'm so angry at the world that all I can do is write. You know
what, Professor Alan Dershowitz?
Yeah.
I love your passion. Your anger spurs you on to continue to fight for justice, and that's what we need in this country. We don't need people who are mealy-mouthed, who can see, both sides. And I mean, I get seeing both sides. I really do. But, take a side. Once you see them, take a side and do something about it. That's why we love you, Professor Alan Dershowitz. Give him hell.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Be well.
Take care.
Keep doing good things.
Bye-bye.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for a light and fit remix. Like a crunchy storm of graham cookies, caramel pearls, and dark chocolate, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 light and fit remix varieties with craveable flavors and up to 120 calories and 10 grams of protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
I'm Cindy Lauper with fellow Cosentix advocate, Chef Michelle Bernstein.
We'll share our experiences with plaque psoriasis, with psoriatic arthritis, and Dr. Panico will talk about the possible connection.
Cosentix secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentix. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur.
Learn more at 1-844-COSENTIX or Cosentix.com/Cindy.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Joining us now is an individual who is absolutely brilliant. We're thrilled to have him on the show today. Andy McCarthy, I'm sure you've seen him on Fox News. He's a contributor there. He's a former U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, which is, of course, a prestigious district. And he actually prosecuted the Sheikh Mohammed case several years ago. He writes for the National Review, and he's really smart. So I'm going to hit it with him right away. Andy McCarthy, thanks so much for being with us. You are an expert when it comes to the interpretation of a lot of the federal laws. And, the president often quotes you, and he's always proud of the fact that Andy McCarthy supports him on X, Y, or Z. There is a little distance, though, on some of the immigration issues. And now that we're in the thick of this thing, whether it's with the campuses or with cases involving, people like Abrego Garcia, there's a lot of different interpretations of the law, and people don't understand it. Can you just give us a primer on what the powers are of the president in terms of the Alien Enemies Act, in terms of visa holders, and in terms of illegals?
Well, Judge, the immigration laws, the way they've been interpreted the last century plus, are in a kind of a thicket where the Supreme Court has taken something that was originally a state responsibility. At the time of the original founding of the country, what was clear was that the states had authority to remove trespassers from their territory, and what was unclear is what the federal authority was, because there's nothing in the Constitution that gives the federal government explicitly control over immigration enforcement. The courts kind of inferred it from the responsibilities of border security and the fact that Congress has the power to set the conditions for naturalization. And what inevitably happens, I think, when the courts kind of begin to find a federal role in something is over time, the federal role swallows the state role. And as a result, we now have the courts basically saying that immigration enforcement is a paramount federal responsibility, but it's a responsibility of Congress. So to the extent the president has authority, it's all the authority that comes from the immigration laws that Congress has enacted. Fortunately for the president, those immigration laws give him immense power to the point that he can do something in the immigration area that I don't think we could do as prosecutors.
Interesting. Okay.
As prosecutors, we can't criminalize or penalize constitutionally protected activity.
Right, like freedom of speech, the right to protest.
Right. On the other hand, in the immigration area, we've had law on the books since the early Cold War. I want to put it like, sometime in the 50s, this was enacted, where based on an assessment by the Secretary of State, the government can retract a visa or a green card and take any class of alien, including lawful permanent resident, which is the highest class, and expel them from the country if the Secretary of State, in his judgment, decides that their presence here and their activities are detrimental to American foreign policy interests.
Right.
That law makes people uncomfortable. I think it makes judges uncomfortable because it kind of rubs against our First Amendment grain. But it's a law, and it's been on the books for a long time.
Okay, so let's focus on that, Andy. So, if the government has the power to retract, whether, you're a green card holder, you're a lawful resident, and once the Secretary of State determines that you shouldn't be here, but what are the criteria that he can use to determine that? And then what are the legal avenues that he must use, may use, or can use?
Yeah, I think what your question hits on is probably the most important area or aspect of this constitutional issue, because in a lot of these areas, we always ask what criteria should the judge use. Here, constitutionally, the more basic question is who gets to decide. And it's relevant for purposes of immigration because, as the courts have said again and again, including the Supreme Court, immigration enforcement, who gets to be in this country and who has to leave, is a political decision, not a legal one. And it's really committed in our system to the political branches. So it would be very presumptuous, in my view, for a court to second-guess Secretary Rubio if he's made an assessment that somebody's presence in the country is detrimental to U.S. foreign policy interests, because he's the one, the voters voted for President Trump to run American foreign policy. President Trump picked in the Senate, I think unanimously confirmed, Secretary Rubio to be the president's main actor as far as implementing U.S. foreign policy is concerned. So who is a judge, unelected, non-political official, to second-guess what the Secretary of State says is detrimental to U.S. foreign policy?
But that's what's happening, Andy. That's what's happening.
Well, it's not happening yet. I mean, there's the problem here is what happened here is that if the administration had just gone by the normal immigration laws and had given notice to these aliens that they want to kick out, that they need to show up for immigration proceedings, then they would have had an immigration hearing at the Justice Department. They would have had we call them immigration judges. They're not really judges or courts. That's a component of the Justice Department. And then that decision gets reviewed by something called the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is also part of the Justice Department and can actually be countermanded by the Attorney General. And then under our law, they cut out the district judges. You get a one-shot appeal to a circuit court, and the circuit court's jurisdiction has been narrowed by Congress, so they can only review purely legal questions. Now, I don't think there's any doubt. I think you're right that if one of these cases got to the circuit court, they would review the question of whether, Rubio had the authority to do what he did. But I think he'd win. So I think they'll win.
Here's the issue that people are not getting. The issue is, if you've got these immigration judges and they work in the Department of Justice, and you've got, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, saying, that their interests are against our foreign policy issues. I mean, this is all, it seems, within the president's ambit and foreign policy ambit. How does a local district court judge get involved? That's number one. And number two, how can we possibly give, let's talk about the students now. How can we possibly give them hearings? There are too many of them. Do we have enough judges?
Well, we don't have enough judges. I mean, that's a whole nother problem.
Yeah.
We have excellent laws on the books, but Congress hasn't funded them. So, for example, the example I always use is we have 20 million illegal aliens. That's the best estimate that I've been able to find in the country, like somewhere between 18 and 21 million.
Yeah.
Congress has authorized 47,600 detention spaces. Jeez. And even though we have expedited legal processes on the books for getting these people out, as you know and I know, as a practical matter, you have to be able to hold people for a week or two in order to get through this process. And if you have that amount of prison space, I did the math at one point, it's less than 0.5%.
Right, exactly.
Of the resources we need. So that's one problem. The other problem is the way that they've gone about trying to get these legal aliens out is, instead of just giving them notice to show up for an immigration hearing, what they've done is arrested them and detained them and then tried to move them from the northeastern part of the country to the Fifth Circuit, where I think the administration thinks it has a better shot with the courts if things come up. And the result of that is, if you arrest and detain a person under circumstances where you don't have to do that, then that person gets to file a habeas corpus petition
in the district court.
And that results in all these district judges now being in the equation when they really shouldn't be in the equation.
But Andy, let me ask you this. If you give them notice to appear, I mean, it's kind of, look, you're a former prosecutor and I am too. There are a lot of people that you don't want to give notice to because they're going to take off. Especially if you've got like Mohammed Khalil or one of these guys, these protesters who have a student visa, say, we're going to bring you to immigration court. And he says to himself, well, I don't have a shot there if Marco Rubio thinks that I'm doing something that's against the national foreign policy. I mean, there is an argument to be made that, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to give you notice. I'm going to round you up. I know what you're saying, though, about sending them down south, which is what they did with Mohammed Khalil. I think he's still in Louisiana, isn't he?
I think he's in Louisiana. There's a judge in Jersey who who has that habeas petition and may try to order him back. I know that with respect to Rumeysa Ozturk,
right, the woman,
the Second Circuit upheld the district judge who ordered that she be brought back to Vermont. There's another guy from Columbia too, whose name is, I think, Moshin Madawi, who's also got an argument before the Second Circuit. He wants to be brought back to Vermont too. I hear what you're saying. I just think the usual risk of flight thing with aliens is that if they're illegal aliens, they don't have any real ties to the community.
Right.
And a lot of them are dangerous. So you would almost always arrest and detain them.
Right.
On the other hand, these are the people we're talking about now, even though they've been involved in pro-Hamas activism, the government hasn't alleged that they're members or that they're associated with Hamas. They have no criminal records, and they want to fight to stay in the country as opposed to flee the country. So I think, at least in the first round, if it were my call, I'm not saying that you're wrong or that, there aren't two ways of looking at this, but I think they would have been in better shape if they had just ordered people to show up at hearings, because what it looks like to these Southern District and Second Circuit judges is that the government was afraid to litigate in New York. And I think they have a strong case under the statute. I think they would win this wherever they litigated it, and they shouldn't act like they need to get to the Fifth Circuit to win.
Well, very interesting that you're talking about the president, that the administration would win it. And, I do too. But it's kind of interesting. Where I disagree is whether or not the notice. But judges would look at it differently. But, then the question is it within the exclusive jurisdiction of the executive authority? But let's talk about what's going on in the colleges. And I'm thrilled to have you on. If you're listening, tuning in now, it's Andy McCarthy. Who's a brilliant legal mind on all of these federal issues. Now we've got Brooklyn College. They're going crazy. Columbia University. Apparently they invited the police on campus to make those 80 arrests. Apparently 56 of them, or whatever the number is, they were actual students. And I got to tell you, Andy McCarthy, what I love is that that they locked them in the library that they were trying to take over and said, you're not leaving until we get your ID so that we can identify you. And I honestly think they should put their pictures up on websites so that these kids don't get jobs, that people understand who they're hiring. But talk about the fact that they closed the library doors and said, you're not getting out unless you give us ID and tell us who you are, because they've been wrapping themselves in the kafayas and masks because they're cowards, obviously.
Yeah, well, this is close to my heart because I went to Columbia, so I would crash for exams in Low Library, and last year they occupied Hamilton Hall, which is where you take most of your classes the first year in the college there. So it's good to see them finally crack down on this. I was particularly happy to see that the Southern District and Harmeet Dillon, in one of the first things she's done at the Civil Rights Division, has charged a guy a couple of days ago with 3 counts of assault under the civil rights statutes, assaults of Jewish people who were attacked at these rallies. These are like sort of pro-Hamas demonstrators that, the media keeps calling them anti-Israel protesters. They're pro-Hamas.
Pro-Hamas, exactly.
Demonstrators. And Hamas has been a designated foreign terrorist organization under American law since we started that process in the mid-'90s. Before we even knew who Al-Qaeda was.
Interesting.
Hamas and Hezbollah were the first organizations that were designated. So I think this is all stuff that has to be done. My biggest complaint during the Biden administration was because the Islamists are an important constituency, and I want to be clear now, I'm talking about Islamists. This is people who are adherent to Sharia supremacy. I'm not talking about just terrorists, right?
Right.
But because they were an important constituency for the Democrats, Biden was scared to death to do anything about the atrocious stuff that's gone on since October 7th. And I know, and I'm sure you probably feel this way as well as a former prosecutor, if you had taken 4 or 5 high-profile cases and prosecuted these people under the civil rights laws and set the tone that this kind of stuff is not going to be tolerated, we wouldn't have had the problems that we had in the months after October 7th. And we wouldn't have had all this crazy stuff that went on at the campuses.
You're
but I
so
think
right.
This happened for 2 reasons. Number one, the administration wouldn't enforce the civil rights laws, the Biden administration. And number 2, and I've been a broken record on this since I did terrorism cases and then wrote about it after the 90s.
You're a voice in the wilderness, Andy.
Well, on this one I was.
I know.
The Muslim Students Associations were started by the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States in the mid-1960s. They had about a handful of them. Now there's over 600 chapters in campuses across North America, not just the United States. And they turn these campuses, whenever there's Israeli issues, which there always seem to be, they turn them into cauldrons of pro-Hamas agitation and anti-Semitism.
Right.
And that's a problem we've created for 3 generations.
Yeah, and the sad part about all this is that, we are victims of our own inaction. And as you say, and as so many have said before, you and in the past several decades, what you don't address is going to come back to bite you. And, the perfect example on a very low level is Colombia. I mean, we thought it was over last year. The police came in, they made arrests. They were going to be prosecuted. Alvin Bragg, the DA in Manhattan, drops the cases. So the message is there are no consequences. Have at it. And unfortunately, they did it again. But I got to tell you, kudos to Claire Shipman. I'm sure that she was really squeezed. And obviously to Donald Trump, who said, you know what? Enough of this. You're not getting any money. You're going to lose your tax exempt status. We're not going to allow you people to come on American campuses, especially if you're on a student visa, and, create all of this chaos. It's chaos, Andy. It's just sheer chaos. And, I can see you in the library, 30 years ago or whatever. The way I was, we're on lockdown, hysterical, and then some lunatic comes in and starts waving a Palestinian flag as if we have time for this nonsense.
Well, look, it's exactly right. We let it go on for too long, and we had every sign that we shouldn't let it go on. But I do think, the president has a knack for coming out on the right side of these 70-30, 80-20 issues. And this is a powerful one in the country. The majority of the country, as opposed to the activist part of the Democratic base, the vast majority of the country wants this stuff stopped. And
of course they do.
If the Justice Department shows under Trump that they're the agents of stopping this, it becomes very obvious that the Democrats are the agents of exacerbating it and catalyzing it. And that's an important division in the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Andy McCarthy, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, we'll not have to deal with this, but I suspect you and I will be talking about this in the very near future again. Thank you so much for your time, Andy. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Summer's heating up, but the savings are cooling off. It's your last chance to shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega deals. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. It's your last chance to shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega deals. Save up to 50% with minimum purchase, plus a free measure. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Feel like you're stuck in career limbo? Clock in, clock out, repeat. No growth, no new opportunities. It's time to break out and break into tech. With CBT Nuggets, you can start building the IT skills that companies are hiring for right now. We make training fast, simple, and practical. From networking to cybersecurity, you'll get short, easy-to-watch videos and hands-on virtual labs so you can build real-world skills without expensive gear or complicated setups. For just $59 a month, you get unlimited access to our full training library. That includes certifications, skill-based learning, and practice exams, a $100 value included free. Learn anytime, anywhere, and get job ready on your terms. Thousands have used CBT Nuggets to launch new careers, and you can too. Right now, CBT Nuggets is offering a free trial. Easily find the training you need and test it out with no commitment. Start your 7-day free trial now at cbtnuggets.com. Don't wait. A better job is just a few clicks away.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Now it's time for me to gavel out with my closing argument. Okay, the president this week, I think, had a great idea, and that is reopening Alcatraz. Now, Alcatraz has a reputation for being inescapable, that once you get in there, you don't get out. It is one of America's most captivating and fascinating places, and it is legendary in terms of it being a top security prison. And it's legendary because of the criminals who went there, including, Scarface and Machine Gun Kelly and Henry Young, who became famous for his role in the murder in Alcatraz. It is surrounded by shark-infested cold waters. It is off the coast of San Francisco, and it can be, I think, reopened and using modern technology, and it will be both a individual as well as a general deterrent. It is a fascinating idea. I think the president should do it. I think Alcatraz should be reopened, built as a secure prison, and I think that the president will effectuate a great policy with this incredible deterrent to criminals. All right, that's my closing statement, everyone. I'll see you here next week, same time, same place. God bless, and again, happy Mother's Day.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.